Do you need that red stool?
Yeah.
Right now, it's tucked under where all the sample.
I pulled it out. It should be next to the tripod.
Okay, good. I didn't know where you wanted such a.
Yeah, just under the tripod or near the tripod's fine.
Wow. Okay, you're an old pro. Exactly. Old, I think it's No.
She said "ol" like O, apostrophe O-L-E, ol. There you go. This one's so funny. The wheels used to be in the opposite positions, the fronts and it was the weirdest cart to try to work until one of Lisa's friends came and switched the wheels around. Yeah, it was weird. Hi, good morning. All right, we're going to get started soon. We're supposed to be full today, so if you guys have extra bags that you want to stash under there to get them out of the way, you can just stick them under those tables over there, because that's fine, but it's just like instead of on chairs, because we're going to still have people coming in. I think it took me a long time to get here today. I don't know about you guys. There was a lot. Oh, perfect. That's fine. But yeah, it took me forever to get here. And every route that I looked at, I was like, red. I'm like, okay, great. I'm glad I gave myself tons of time, but come on in. Yeah, come check. No, that's fine. Come check in. We haven't started yet. Out front.
Hi. Okay.
Hello.
I need a thing.
It's over there.
I was like, I know they're out here, right?
They are out there. Come on in. No, we're not. Haven't even started. Go check in with Victoria.
I'll check people in.
Okay. But we are going to need every minute of this training today. Let me just check up front really quick. All right, cool. Just have two up here. Okay. We got more coming in. Okay. What school are you at? And Belmont. Got it. No, that's for me. The reason why I want the schools on the name tags is then I can be like, oh, you're at the same school as, oh, okay. And I connect. And sometimes I know like how your school runs or who your school coordinator is or that kind of thing. But welcome, come on in, take a seat. We're going to be packed today. Come on in. ladies. Good to see you. Want to be there or here? All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a full day today. Just FYI, we are recording this today, as you can see, so it'll be available on our website for you to go back and review and look at again. My name is Kelly Bravo. I'm the Director of Programs here at Art in Action, and I feel like I'm like squished in here, but that's okay. We'll just make it work. We'll make it work. Welcome to clay training. A little bit about myself. Before I started working full-time here, I had a passion for clay. I took classes at Foster City Park and Rec and tried to learn how to throw and was more of a hand builder, that kind of thing. And then I really realized after being there for some years that I was more into figurative sculpture. I liked that better than like actual clay and ceramics and stuff. So I have a little bit of experience with clay, and I want to share that with you. Our training today, we're going to go over, it's more about techniques than it is about going through each lesson. So this training isn't going to be like the other trainings where I go, this is lesson 1 and lesson 2 and lesson 3. It's not going to be like that. I'm going to call out the techniques that we need to use for each lesson, and I'm not going to go over the specifics of any of the lessons. We will actually do 3 of the lessons. Those lessons illustrate the techniques that we need to show you. So you can learn about the artist and all that stuff on your own by studying the website. Let's see, I have some handouts for you guys to take with you. The first one should be clay suppliers. Those are local clay planets there on the top because that's where I go to get the clay for us, and they're in Santa Clara. Also Clay People and Leslie Ceramics. I haven't been to those, so I'm not familiar with those, but I had a trainer help me do some research on them. The prices and stuff on here, I didn't update this sheet this year, so if the prices might be different, their store hours might be a little different, so check their website for that. I realized that last night. I was like, oh, I forgot to call them and find out all that stuff. But the other thing that we're going to be going over is the handout that's called Working with Clay. This one, the first hour of this training is me talking, believe it or not, me talking and us going through this. Because clay has a lot of terminology that's different and that you're not necessarily familiar with. So who in the room here is a ceramic artist? Does ceramics? No? Oh, okay. No, sometimes we have somebody who does that, and it's good to know that they're here. So who has done like high school ceramics? Anything? Yeah, okay, a little bit of dabbling here and there. That's good. That's good. That's great. So there are so many ways, as I found, to do ceramics and to do clay. And how we've designed this training is we're giving you all the options that for your school, and to make it easy for you to figure out how you're going to do it. Some schools have a kiln, and they do their bisque firing, and they do their glaze firing, and they have a certain regimented way that they do the projects. Other schools use air dry clay, and they paint it with Tempera Paint, and voila, they're done. The most important thing about these projects is that the kids get to work in 3 dimension. That's what we're really giving them, that opportunity, because you'll see today, if you've never played with clay, that it'll blow your mind. Some people will find, oh, look at this, and you can make something really easily. And other people will be like, okay, start over, it's just different than working flat. It's just completely different. So today we are going to be, like I said, doing 3 of the projects. We are going to be using air dry clay today, so you can take your projects home. I switched over to the air dry clay a couple years ago because I just wanted to try it out. To see how it feels in the class, and I just decided to stick with it because it allows you guys to take the pieces home and you can go on from there. Okay, so let's dive right in because we've got a lot to cover. And so welcome to clay training. Okay, so first off, what is clay? What is it? Mud. Yeah, basically clay is natural. It's found in our natural environment. It's usually found in riverbeds, and you can harvest clay. I don't know if they call it a clay mine or a quarry or what they call it when they do harvest clay, but you can take clay straight out of the ground sometimes, depending on the quality of it, and use it for ceramics. There are certain areas that have really good clay. I remember my parents lived in North Carolina for a while, and there's a place over there called Seagrave, something like that we went to visit. Everyone in that town is potters because they have this natural vein of clay. How many of you guys go to Arnold? Yeah, did you know that there's a quarry or whatever over near Arnold or near Murphy's where you can get clay from? You're going to want to sit somewhere. Oh, you do have a spot right there. Perfect. Okay, good. All right, so clay has in it different minerals, and when you fire clay, firing means you have to fire it up to like about 1800 degrees. Now, you can't do this in your oven at home. It changes the chemical composition to it, and it makes it hard and it makes it solid. So we'll talk more about that. And to fire clays, you're required to have a kiln unless you're using an air dry clay like we're going to do today. What's the difference between red and white clay? Color? Yep, that's right. The minerals that are in it. So like red clay has iron in it, and so that's what makes it red. Let's see. What do we have here? What's our next slide? So this is a picture of clay that's been, taken out of the ground, and it's on a plaster bat. It's drying out. It's hardening up a little bit. This is a fantastic visual that I stole off the internet. A teacher named Alicia Eggers. She's with the Art of Education. And it just really shows, this slide and the next slide, explains the different stages of clay, which I just love this. So it starts off, these are the basic clay stages. Starts off, comes out of the ground. The state when it's soft and malleable, like this here, is what we call plastic. When it's malleable, it has lots of water in it, we call that plastic. Then once you work with the clay in the plastic state, then you have to dry it out. It has to be completely dry before you fire it in the kiln. The next stage is when you fire it in the kiln, and then after that is when you can paint it or put glazes on it, that kind of thing. Okay, let's go over. Here's a fantastic chart that I love of hers. So again, it starts off the different stages and how it may look or how it may feel. So it starts off, you get it out of the ground. It's dark, it's cold, it's wet. When it's in this state here, and I've got this way over here, this is when it's plastic. It's soft, it's malleable, you can use it. The next state is called leather hard. I don't have a sample of leather hard clay here today because since we're using air dry clay, you can't let it it just dries out. It doesn't get to that stage. But leather hard stage is when the clay is still, it's been sitting out for maybe a day or so or a couple hours. It's firming up because the water is evaporating out of it. It's a little bit bendable, but it's like a piece of leather. When clay is leather hard is when it's most stable, when you can transport it and move it around and you won't be, don't have to worry about breakage. It's also a great state when you can carve into leather. That's nothing more satisfying than like carving into a nice piece of leather hard clay. It's fantastic. But it's still cold and it's still, chilly. The next state is called bone dry. That is when it has been sitting out and it's completely dry. I have some pieces over here. You guys can come look at these later. Usually we have it set up over there so you can kind of wander around, take pictures of everything that you want to take pictures of. But this piece of clay right here is bone dry. I found this maybe like 8 years ago, tucked away in a drawer, and I was like, oh, look at that piece of bone dry clay. You know clay is bone dry when you touch it and you rub it and it kind of comes off on your hand a little bit. That's when you know it's totally bone dry. Sometimes, like she says on her chart, it's room temperature. This, I put it, it's cold. It always feels cold. It doesn't feel room temperature to me. These pieces are also bone dry clay, this one and this one. They have not been fired. Another name that we have for this clay when it's bone dry is greenware. So sometimes you'll hear it referred to as greenware. So these are greenware. Greenware, when your clay is in the state of bone dry or greenware, it's the most delicate. So that is also the time when you are probably transporting it from where it was to dry out to take it to the kiln. That's when the breaks occur, is when you're transferring stuff to take it over to the kiln room where you're going to fire it. So bone dry clay, Bone dry clay can also be taken back. You can back it up by re-wetting it, and you can reconstitute it to make it soft again. You're able to do that. You can do that. The next stage is once you've fired it, it's called bisque. This is a piece of bisque ware. This has been fired. Look at the differences between the two. There's a little bit of difference in the color. This one is much lighter and oranger, but listen to the difference in the sound. This is bone dry, and then this is bisque. This is fired. You hear a little ting, 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 ting. So that's how you can tell the differences. If you listen to it, you feel the bone dry is chalky, it's coming off on your hands. This one doesn't do that. It might be dirty or dusty from the kiln, but nothing's coming off on my hand, you know. So what would happen if I took this piece of bone dry clay and I threw it in a bucket of water? What do you think might happen? It would soften, it would slake down, it would turn into soft plastic clay again. What would happen if I took the the bisque fired piece and I threw it in a bucket of water? It would get wet. Yeah, it would sink to the bottom and get wet, and it would never dissolve down again because it has changed its chemical state because it was fired. Okay. Excellent. You guys are good learners today. And then the next state after doing the bisque fire is the glaze firing, where you add color and you fire it again to add color to it. Okay, so I've gone through all those. One other state of clay that I want to talk about, which is going to be really important for you guys, is something called slip. Slip is, I'm showing you this dirty cookie container from Trader Joe's, because slip is when you take your plastic clay and add water to it. If I can get this open. You add water to it to make a slippery, slurry-like substance. And this is used when you join pieces of clay together. You guys have some on your table in this little container here. Slip is something you need to make ahead of time. There's nothing like getting to your clay lesson on the day of, and you go and you're looking for slip, and the bucket looks like this, and it's empty, and you're like, I gotta do it, make my slip. So the way that you make slip is you take some of the clay, you put it in a container, put water on it, and then you rub it between your hands to soften it up and kind of mush it up. The consistency that you're looking for is heavy cream to peanut butter, somewhere in between there. And you'll feel my slip today that I made yesterday is a little, no, I didn't make it yesterday. I added to it yesterday. It's has some lumps in it. It's a little bit lumpy. But it lasts. I made this slip that you guys have today. I made it in January, after the January clay training. Sealed it up with the lid, and then put it away to store it, and then brought it out, and I looked at it. I opened it up. It was water. It looked great. I just wanted to add a little bit more, so I added more clay to it so I could have just a little bit more, because I knew that I'm going to need just a tiny bit more. So that's how you make the slip. So check at your school, see what they have. Somebody may have already made it. There may be little containers stacked around somewhere that the slip goes into. You may open it up and it may be totally dried out. If that's the case, throw it in the trash. Or actually, no, you can just wet it up and yeah. It's easier to make slip with bone dry clay than it is with the plastic clay, believe it or not. So if you have dried up stuff that, this looks like it's garbage, but it's the same clay that you're using, you can just put water on it and turn it into slip. The slip has to be the same clay. You can't use a different clay. It has to be the same. Yeah.
Is that true for air dry clay as well?
Yeah, this is air dry clay. We're working with air dry clay today. Yeah. Yep.
When you say the same clay, does that come from the same bag or just the same type?
Same type of clay. Yeah. Doesn't have to be the same bag, because it should be the same formula. If you're getting it from somebody, it should be the same formula. Okay.
And sorry, you said the consistency should be like heavy cream or
peanut butter.
Okay.
Between heavy cream and peanut butter. So it'll work. It'll all work. Okay. Let's see what's next in my little. Okay. Once you finish your clay projects and you have to fire them, there are 3 different types of kilns. Maybe there's more. Who knows? But 3 different kinds out in the world. Probably your school has something that looks like this. This is a standard electric kiln. For like ceramic production, like, you know, tableware and that kind of stuff, or larger sculptures, some institutions use gas-fired kilns. You'll see they have rollers on them, so they can roll in heavy, huge pieces. I got my degree at UC Davis. They had these big kilns there like that, where they would like literally stack the bricks up and then fire it up. Or you can use, you can do a wood burning kiln. Sometimes people choose to use wood burning kilns or gas kilns to create different effects or different colors on their works. With the gas kiln, you can do oxidation or reduction, adding oxygen to it or taking oxygen out of it, and that will change the color of glazes and stuff. You might have a funky old kiln that's rusted and gross and looks like that. This is the one that lives in my garage. I got it cheap, and what was good about it, the reason why I took it, even though it has dials and I have to like manually do everything, is it had good fire brick on the inside and it had brand new coils. So I'm like, it works, it totally works. So if your school has something funky and old, it doesn't mean it's bad. If the fire brick is good and the coils are good or new, then it's fine. If you're not sure about the state of your kiln, if you're like in charge of this now at your school and you're not sure, you might want to call down to Clay Planet and ask them to send a technician to your school to come service your kiln, and they'll tell you what needs to be done to get it up to date. But I have the feeling most of your schools out there have kind of sorted through all this recently, because I think a lot of the schools have had to do a ventilation and that kind of stuff, whereas back in the day, the kiln was chucked in a closet, you know, and yeah, the janitor's closet and that kind of thing. So, okay. So this is just a little picture of Clay Planet. Regular bags of clay, they're pretty darn cheap. They run from anywhere from $12 to $25, a 25-pound bag, you know, the big bag. Let's see, what else? The Clay Planet recommends to use a high fire clay, even though you're low firing it. That's what they recommend. Use a good quality high fire clay. For red clay, they recommend cinnamon. And for white clay, they recommend Orion Stout. I've used Orion Stout a lot. I really, really like how that clay fires and how it works, because you can do small things and you can also build large with it. Those are written here on the little sheet there for you. So if you're getting it from them, that's what they recommend. If you're doing air dry clay, there is Crayola air dry clay. That is a possibility. Some schools have this. This is what they purchase, and that's fine. There has been in the past, and I don't know if it still is the case, but Crayola air dry clay has some faults to it. I used to use it and say, oh, it's great, what do you mean? And then people in training here would be like, no, it's terrible. It crumbles and falls apart. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, here's an example of what they mean. This was a squirrel at one point. And something happened to it. All of a sudden, after I had it a couple years, it started developing this weird crusty bloom on it. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe Crayola's fixed it by now, but people used to pre-warn me. This little guy was made at the same time, different batch of clay. It wasn't from the same clay, and it's perfectly fine. So I don't know. Once my squirrel started to fall apart, I was like, okay, now I see what they're talking about. Got it. So, but maybe they have resolved that issue. That was, like 8 years ago. The clay that we're using today is made by a company called Laguna, and it is called Mexo white clay. I just discovered this maybe 5 years ago. What school is it? I think it was College Park introduced it to me or something like that. I was like, whoa, I've never heard of that. And they really liked the way that it felt, and so I'm going to try it out too, and that's what we are using today. Air dry clays are more expensive than just your regular standard water-based clay. A 25-pound bag of this last week cost $25, and it seems like every year they tick it up a couple bucks. Last year it was 23. The year before that it was 20. So it's $25. You said something the other day, Jana. A 25-pound bag serves how many students? 1 class. Okay.
Approximately a pound.
Yeah. All right, and here's some other pictures of the air dry clay. Oh, there's my cost. Okay. Cool. Let's move on. Oh, here's a picture of me making slip with a red clay, because we used to do the training with red clay. Okay, so let's move on to coloring. So I'm on the second page here. At the top of the second page, there's something, the cheapest way, if you're doing full ceramics and you're firing everything and you want to glaze fire, the cheapest, least expensive kind of glaze for firing is something called engobe. Engobe is just clay that has pigment in it. Nothing else, nothing special. It's just clay with pigment. And it has a matte finish, and again, it's very inexpensive. It comes in containers that looks like this, but instead of it saying UG right there, it says engobe instead. And with engobe, you can't get a bright red. Like the brightest red you get is more like a burgundy color. So something to keep in mind. The next thing, I'm like, where's my words? Where are my words? The next thing, the next step up from engobe is an underglaze. And this is an example of an underglaze. This is, again, Clay Planet sells this. This is their brand, Western underglazes. And these are color on it, color. And with underglazes, you need to do multiple layers of color. Have you guys ever gone to that, like, done the painting of the, yeah, they're like, put 3 coats on. So think about, same with underglazes. Underglaze can go on after you do, when you have bone dry, you can do them bone dry, or you can do it when it's bisque. Most people do the underglaze part to color their pieces after you've done the bisque firing. And these are a little bit more expensive, and I will tell you that the most expensive color is red. Every time it'll be red. This and yellow is like the cheapest. This one is like $12, so it's not so bad. But the reds can be like $25, $30, a lot more expensive. And you're like, what's the deal? But just take more expensive materials to make it. So when you are working with the kids and they are glazing, so you'll go and you'll do the clay project, and then you'll come back. What was that? Oh, yeah.
Something like red's 10 more toxic.
Probably, yeah. Yeah. So when you're going to the class and you're coming back for your second round to do the coloring or to paint the art pieces, you're not going to hand the kids this and a paintbrush. You're going to give them little teeny servings of the glaze in little like medicine cups or little palettes, and each glaze will have its own paintbrush because you don't want to mix the glazes because it'll contaminate them. The worst thing would be to get a kid taking their red paintbrush and sticking it in the yellow glaze, because it would completely change the color, and yeah, there's no going back. You're like, oh, you just ruined it. Or if the kid took the yellow and stuck it in the red, which is more expensive, that would be terrible too. So these are the underglazes. So that's what this is like the painting part for the kids. Another thing to keep in mind is that an underglaze, a lot of times it doesn't look like the color that it's going to be when it's fired. So sometimes you may have this green looking gunky glaze, but it turns out, yellow, bright lemon yellow. So you'll need to have some samples for the kids to see ahead of time. Example here is somebody made a glaze tile where they tried out all the different glazes on a piece of white clay so that the kids could see. Your pink is going to look like that if you paint it on 3 times. Your red is going to look like that. So that's something to keep in mind. Look around. Maybe your art closet has a glaze tile already that you can just use. Let's see. Then the glazes, these underglazes are also matte. They're not shiny at all. The next step is the clear glaze that will go on top of the colored part. I recommend that adults do this. Adults put on the clear glaze. It's because the kids aren't going to get anything out of it. The clear glaze is that color. It's this milky kind of greenish blue color. When you paint onto your piece and you're painting over the underglaze, it looks like it's covering it up. And so that kind of might freak the kids out a little bit. The other thing to remember with the clear glaze is that you're going to need to leave like a little lip of just raw clay on each thing. Like, for example, on this one on the side, I didn't even paint glaze on the side of it here, because the glazes, if you get too much on there, it can run and it can drip, and it'll adhere your piece to the kiln shelf. So anytime you use glazes, you need to make sure, take your sponge and wipe all that off. Make sure there's no glaze on the back. Clean it off with a damp sponge before you put it in the kiln. And so that's why we kind of don't want the kids to do that part, because you really need to make sure that the pieces are clean before putting them in the kiln. Okay, so now I told you about on-gobe, I told you about underglaze, I told you about clear top coat glaze. Oh, and for this kind of glaze, you just need one even coat, just one. These need more, 3. This is just 1. If you put too much on, sometimes it can get cloudy, sometimes it can get bubbly, or it can run off the piece. So 1 even coat. Okay, now we have another thing over here. These are called, thank you. These are a different kind of underglaze. This is called Mako Stroke and Coat. If you've ever been to Laurel Street Arts, one of those places, this is what they use there. These are more expensive, okay? I'm trying to think of, I was trying to look it up yesterday on their website, what the costs were for these, but it had such a range because they sell them in little teeny bottles and then they sell them in big bottles, and so I couldn't figure out how much this one would cost versus this one. I just was like, you guys can figure it out. But what's really nice about these is these are true, bright, nice colors. The other thing that's really cool about them is they fire shiny. So if you use these, you don't need to use top glaze on top. And if you want to get that nice bright red, like the apron color red, they've got it. They've got it. It's really, really nice. So this can also be a step saver too. You don't have to do this. You can just paint this stuff on your bisque, paint it with this, and you fire it, and you're done. Done, done, done. So your school might have these. And if you do, yippee, you're in luck. But again, they're expensive, so you're going to just dole out little bits.
Only 1 coat of that?
No, 3.
Also 3.
Yeah.
But no clear glaze?
No clear glaze.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let's see, what else? Oh, another option for painting or getting color on them is you can also just use Tempera Paint. You wouldn't have to fire it again. Well, if you fired it again, the Tempera Paint would burn off and it would go away. There's a piece over there. Yeah, that one too, actually. The turtle, is it a turtle? Yeah, that one was painted with Tempera Paint. They, did the project good enough. Your school already has it. If that's good enough for you, you don't care about it being all slick and ceramic-y, then do that option. Yeah?
For a grade, it's Sharpie. We use Sharpie. And for a grade.
Yes, but you wouldn't fire it again. If you use Sharpie on it, that's the end. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah. Another thing you can do, if you do use the Tempera Paint, yes, Jenna? Thank you. Another thing you can do if you're just doing Tempera Paint, but you want it to have a little bit of a shine, you can dip it in acrylic floor wax when you're done. So that's another option. And and I found these things out by talking to docents, talking to people like you and what you guys do at your school. This little guy here, the little bear right there, that has just a little bit of a shine you can see to it's kind of like an eggshell. That was dipped in the floor wax. Yep.
Could you spray it with clear
The Krylon stuff. Yeah. You can do that too. Yep. So as you see, there's a lot of different options for how you can do the projects at your school. Even if your school has a kiln and does, the big fire up, and the glazing and all that stuff, You might decide, look, I don't have time to go back 2 times. You know, we're just going to paint it with Tempera Paint, and I'm going to dip it in floor wax, and we'll be done. The experience for the kids is doing the project. Doing the project is what's important. Okay, at the bottom of page 2, we have color and firing options. I just want to kind of run through all those again so we can kind of just repeat it, and so you can kind of know what your options are. So number 1 is like the best case, like traditional. You make your clay project, you let it dry, you fire it to Bisque Ware, you paint it with underglazes, you cover it with clear glaze, and you fire it a second time. That's like the traditional way that people do it. A less expensive option is same thing. You do your clay project, you paint it with engobe. With engobe, since it's just colored clay, you can paint it on when it's wet. This example here, this shield, this is Cheyenne Shield that I did with my kids. I didn't have time that year. I made my shields also like way huger than it called for in the book because I just like, that's so small. But I had them do their project, do their little etching, scratch all their stuff in there. And then I had them paint with the engobe straight onto the clay. And then I fired it. And then I did the clear glaze, and then I fired it again. Because I didn't have time to go back a second time to paint it. So I just painted that engobe straight on, and it worked. I didn't know if it would work. I just tried it, see what would happen. Okay. Paint it on weather hard. You dry it, bisque fire it, and then clear glaze and fire it. Cheap and easy with 1 firing is you do the clay project, you let it dry, you fire it to bisque. Paint with Tempera Paint or acrylic paint, and then dip it in floor wax. That's done and easy. Saves time, but is expensive. Only 1 firing is you do the clay project, you let it dry. Hold on. Let it dry. Oh, okay. When the project is dry, you paint it with these expensive ones. We haven't fired it yet. And then you fire it. You can totally do that. People say, yeah, you can't paint it on it. Yes, you can. You can because we tried it. You know, it's just give it a whirl. You don't have time. Let's try this. Okay. And then the final option is air dry clay. The clay is more expensive itself, but you're saving on time and you're saving on paints. Air dry clay project, let it dry, paint it with tempera, and then dip it in floor wax. So those are, yep.
When you paint with tempera, is it 1 coat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then immediately as soon as it dries, when you're that day, you dip it, or do you have to dry it?
Yeah, you know, the paint dries really quickly because since this has dried out, since it's a dried project, when you put the paint on it, it like sucks it up right away. Same with the floor wax. When you dip it in the floor wax, you don't have to like wait around for it to dry. It dries like immediately.
You dip the whole thing in the wax.
Yep.
And put it on a plate and.
Yep. Yep.
And how many projects? Like 90?
Oh, we've had this forever.
You don't need a lot. I mean, really, you just need enough to be able to dip it down in. So it'll start going down, but depending on the bucket size you use, I can imagine easily.
Yeah, I did a class with a bottle of Mop and Glow, and I didn't even use half of it. You know, yeah.
How long does air dried clay take to dry?
That's a great question. It depends on how thick your piece is, but we recommending it. I'm going to talk about drying and storage in a minute. The manufacturer says 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days. Yep.
So working with the clay is very drying and hard on your skin and nail. Do you have any recommendations for how to help the kids deal with that, prevent any problems, and deal with any sensitivities that might
That's a really good question. I haven't really had anybody have a problem with it. You know, personally, I get like, after I've been working with clay for a while, I just have to use a lot of lotion. But I haven't had, have you had any kids have a problem in class with it?
So the kids, I've had kids where, and you don't learn this as you use it, you get a very dry coating on your hand as you deal with it. And it's kind of like baking where it does actually help. When I try to explain, actually helps like when you're rolling out dough and you want a little flour, it helps it from sticky. Because you'll find it's very sticky. But for those kids that does really bother them, I will put out like just a damp paper towel. Not a sponge or spray water or anything because they'll start playing with that. Just a damp paper towel so they can kind of feel like they're wetting it down a little bit again. Those are for the kids who find it too dry and get bothered by that. But the kids who I find it was too wet or too sticky, we actually would keep a little cornstarch.
Okay.
Kind of like a flour vessel. But in general, when you work with it and you get that nice powder layer, it actually helps with this.
Yeah. This glaze just a tiny
It's a tiny bit different.
Fingernail, because I know that in my ceramics class that it just trashes them really quickly. Is enough from a single day's use for them to start having problems if they have thin nails or anything like that?
I don't think so.
No.
No. The other thing you'll notice around the room is we have buckets everywhere. I have a bucket here, there's one there, one there.
If you start working with it and your hands are starting to get like crumbly and just go splash your hands in the bucket to get some of the big chunks off, and then it'll just feel better. Okay. Yeah.
Between the underglaze, so they do the underglaze, how long do we let it dry before we do the clear glaze?
That's a great question because it dries like that.
Oh.
Yeah.
We can do it the same day.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll see as you're painting it, it's like the clay just sucks it in, and it's like, oh, okay, it's dry. Yeah. And the same with the clear glaze on the top. Is it sucks in like that? It's like I would literally stand in the kiln room and like paint my things, wipe off the bottom, and put them in. Yeah, it's that fast. It's that fast. Okay, let's see where we are here. Oh, this is a sample of what a clay, tile would look like with just, one coat versus 3 coats. That's a good visual for the kids. Because some kids would, using the 1 coat, it looks like a watercolor, and that may be an effect that they want to utilize for their projects. Okay. Let me see. I'm going to hold off on that, and I'm going to turn to here. Okay, so this is a picture of the inside of my kiln, and this is what I'm talking about fire brick. Fire brick is really delicate. You'll notice as you touch it, it sort of feels like it's like crumbling a little bit. If you have a big wedding ring and you're like loading your kiln, so be aware of that. You don't want to like knock a big chunk out of the side of your kiln. And inside these little pieces here, that's where the coils are, where the heat comes from, the electric heat. Another thing you'll notice is that I have a shelf on the bottom of my kiln. The bottom of the kiln is fire brick too. You don't want to ever place objects on that fire brick because you could damage it. So you're going to need to have a kiln shelf on the bottom. And there are 3 little, I could not think of the word last night, little risers underneath that kiln shelf to lift it up off of the bottom. That also allows for airflow and heat to move around. Over here, you'll see the little thermocouple sticking out of the side. That is where you'll put your pyrometric bars. And you need to do that, put your bar in there. I have another picture of it. I'll show that to you in a minute. You need to do that before you load your kiln. Otherwise, you won't be able to turn your kiln on. And then you're like, whoa, how come it's not working? And then you're like, oh, I forgot to put the cone in. So then you have to unload everything. This is a picture, an example of what a loaded bisque kiln looks like. When you bisque fire, the pieces can touch each other. No big deal. They won't stick to each other. That's fine. So you can stack up bowls. You can whatever. No big deal. But when you do glaze firing, everything has to be separate. Nothing can touch each other. Otherwise, when that glaze turns into glass, they will bond together and stick together. So those are the differences. Here's the picture. This is the thermocouple where you will put your pyrometric bar to, the pyrometric bar will tell the kiln when it's reached full temperature. It'll bend and it will shut the kiln off. So, and to put it in, you lift up that center thing, you place the bar across the 2 things on the side, and the little thing is on the top. I don't know what that little thing's called. And then these are what the pyrometric bars look like. Again, sometimes they're called cones because sometimes they are a cone that melts down in a different type of kiln, in a gas kiln, but this is electric. The little pyrometric bars look like that, and when they're done, it'll look like that inside that thermocouple when it's bent. If you ever, when you're going to put the little cone in, if you ever drop it on the floor, throw it away. If you ever get it wet, throw it away and use another one. How do I know this? Because I made that mistake and had a misfiring. And then I was like, gee, what went wrong? And then I was like, oh, I did drop the cone on the floor. Maybe that caused it to have a problem. So, and then these are examples of the kiln furniture that you use to stack your shelves. See, I have more pictures here. So here's the inside of the kiln with those legs or whatever they're called to stack your shelves. So you got to put those in there before you put your projects in, because you have to know where those are going to be. Then on top of that, when you add the next shelf, so that's what they look like inside, put in a triangle. So then when you add your shelf on top of it, you're going down inside your kiln with your kiln shelf, and you're resting it on top of those little legs in there. So it'll look like that, but inside. And then these are called, if you see these in your kiln room, these are called prongs. These are used for when you're glazing. If you have pieces that have glaze on them and you're not so sure if it might drip, or if it has kind of glaze on the bottom because it's a round, piece, put your pieces on these prongs if you have them. That'll help you out. Like I talked about earlier, we don't want glaze on the bottom of any of the things, but when you're doing like the 5th grade Klaus Oldenburg and they've got an ice cream cone and you're not exactly sure what is the top and what's the bottom, if you've got the prongs, put it on the prongs and you'll have no problem getting it off the prongs. As you can see on this one piece over here up at the top on that one, there's something stuck on there. That's glaze. Glaze dripped during the firing and it stuck to the prong. Okay, what's next? Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk about setup. So when you set up in your classroom, think about your classroom and where is the best way to do the project. Maybe the classroom's not the best place to do this because they're going to be dropping clay on the floor, and if you have carpet in your classroom, maybe the classroom's not the best place. Maybe you can see if the multi-use room is available or something, an area like that has a floor, because I guarantee you're going to have clay on the floor. It just falls off. It just is what happened. So think about that. Think about the table setup. As you can see, this is a completely different configuration than our normal trainings. And we cover the tables with plastic. Look at the plastic on the tables. We reuse this over and over again. We put tape on the side of it, masking tape, and then we stick masking tape to the masking tape so we can take it off and wipe them down and reuse them. And we just use them over and over and over again until somebody rips one of them, and then we usually put tape on it and cheat and flip it over and use it again. So think about that. Also, some schools have canvas covered boards that they use for their clay projects. Some schools use newspaper, which is getting harder and harder to get a hold of. So just think about how you're going to do that. I talked to somebody last night. She's like, we just do the clay projects on the desk, and I wash the desks. It's like, okay, that works too. Also, have wash buckets for the students. You do not want to send the kids to the sink with clay on their hands because you'll clog the drains. So they have to wash in a wash bucket first to get the big particles off, and then go to the sink to wash their hands. Yesterday when I was making the slip, I forgot to set myself up with a wash bucket. So I went into the kitchen and I'm taking paper towels and I'm just scraping off everything that I can try to get off my hands before I wash them. How much clay per student? We talked about that earlier, about 1 pound per student. A project that needs less than that is the 1st grade little sculpture. That just needs, 3/4 pound, maybe 1/2 pound. We say a fist-sized ball of clay for that one. We mean a child's fist, not an adult. A friend of mine, he's this big dude. He's like 6 feet. He's like, dude, what? You said a fist-sized clay. And so, I made a fist-sized clay, and the kids couldn't handle it. And I'm like, no, it's child size. He's like, oh, okay. He totally, because the kids couldn't deal with that much clay and hang on to it. You will always have leftover scraps if you use a pound, but the kids need the extra stuff to work with. They need to have options to add more and to take away. What I do when I'm done with my clay lessons and I have leftover clay, I throw it away. I just toss it in the garbage. It's, it cost me $12 for the bag anyway, because unless you're using air dry clay, you have to maintain the integrity of the clay so that there's no air bubbles in it. One time I thought I would be the good school coordinator, and I'd recycle all the clay, and I know how to wedge clay, and I have the space to do it at home. And I took home 50 pounds of clay and wedged it, and I was so sore the next day, and I was just like, I will never do that again. I will pay the $12 for the fresh bag of clay. Yes.
Could you take the leftovers and throw it into your slip?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Jana?
For the younger grades, like eighth and second even, any of the extra clay that I had, I would actually create little balls, and then when the kids were really fast after their lesson, they're done, they just play with the clay. And then they can take it home, because it's still unusable in terms of
Firing.
firing. But it gives them something to do while they're done, and not their kids.
So when you buy the clay, because we don't have air dry clay, but we have regular clay that's going to be fired, it doesn't have to be wedged when it comes,
No.
or we're going to have to wedge it.
No, when it comes in the, I don't know how many bags of clay over here, but like Jana's working with them back there in the corner. They come out of the pug mill, and they are no air
So
bubbles.
you can just cut it
Just
out.
cut it and go. Yep.
And then after they've been like manipulating it for a little bit, that's not going to introduce any air bubbles. We're okay. Or when we're making the
Balls or
ball-
the slabs or whatever. No, because you're just cutting off, hunks of it and keeping it together. And yeah, the only one that I would worry about that is the 5th grade Oldenburg, because they're making these interesting, shapes of stuff. So that's one thing to talk to the kids is you got to keep the clay solid. You can't like fold something over and then, because there's potential for getting air bubbles in it. The air bubbles, if the air has no way to get out, it pop, and the kids call that an explosion. So it pops, it breaks the piece or a part of the piece, and then it potentially ruins the piece next to it and the piece next to that because, yes. If you've ever had something where somebody else's piece has exploded in the kiln and it's ruined your piece, you're just like, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I was really looking forward to seeing that. Okay, drying and storing. Okay, I've got this nasty box from Costco up here because these are the best boxes to store your clay pieces in. They're stackable and they kind of lock into each other, so they're really, really handy. If you can get yourself some of those, and people are trying to get rid of them, at Costco. They're like throwing them away. So if you can grab some of those, great. Every time when you're storing clay pieces and you're drying them, it's best to dry things as slowly as possible. Slowly as possible. You'll reduce the risk of cracks or breakage or warping. Also, when you put pieces in a box, I always put down newspaper on the bottom or plastic, because as the pieces dry, they shrink, and you don't want part of it sticking and part of it. I've had people tell me, you don't need to do that in these boxes, they're fine. I've never had a problem with it. What do you do?
I always lay down plastic for newspapers.
Just because you don't want to be the boob that didn't do it and then all the pieces broke,
And there's plastic everywhere that you can just cut up and reuse.
Yeah. If you put plastic on your tables, that's a great thing to, cut off a hunk and put it in the bottom of your box.
It also prevents the cardboard box that you want to use each year from absorbing the moisture and absorbing itself. So preserve
True.
the box.
True. So, okay. And like I said, as clay dries, it shrinks. It shrinks about 10%. Okay, what else? So the slab projects, the flat ones, those are the most vulnerable because they can really warp a lot. They do tend to dry faster than the thicker, chunky pieces, but those are the ones that can, if they shrink too fast, they'll warp or crack. Dry slowly. Okay, let me show you. So when my kids finish their project, the day that they go into the box, I wrap it with plastic, all sides underneath the box, and I want it sealed. And then when I put it in storage, wherever it is, in the classroom, up on a high shelf, or in storage room, I don't know, whatever, however your school does it, I leave them there for a week, covered in plastic, tight plastic for a week. I let them sit. A week later, I go in, I check them to see how they're doing. Some are drying faster than others, so I might, move things around. I might turn the boxes around. Oh, by the way, this is dry cleaner plastic that I have on this one here. That's, again, it's recycling something that was going to be thrown in the trash. Dry clean plastic is like the best for clay projects. It's so nice. So then I go in after a week and I kind of turn the box, whatever, rotate positions. Then I loosen the plastic like this. And I let it go for another week like that, and just to slowly dry it. Be aware in your classroom is there's heater vents that might be blowing down, or if, some classrooms have 2 doors in it, and if you've stored your stuff there and there's a breeze blowing back and forth in the back of the classroom, it'll dry your pieces faster. The pieces dry, it's airflow, not necessarily temperature. Temperature helps, but it's airflow. If there's airflow on them, the airflow is what's drying them out. And you said something last night that was really good about your air dry clay pieces, how you wrap them.
The same thing so even though air dry only takes 5 to 7 days, I do the same thing for the first couple of days. I wrap it up in plastic as well, because it's just like the fire kiln clay, and I just want to slow down the process so that the inside gets as dry as the outside. And then,
Yeah.
but it's just a faster rate.
Yeah, the first time we did the clay training here with the air dry clay, we just after the training was over, we just left all the pieces out and let them dry. The next day, the flat pieces, the face, they were all cracked. Yeah, they were all cracked. So this one, the next time we did clay training, I just literally took a piece of plastic and tossed it over it and walked away, and went and checked it the next day, and it was flat and dry and nice. It was fine. It was fine. Okay, couple more things before we dive into what we're doing. We're doing great on time. Yeah, make sure your pieces are an even thickness. I used to have the attitude of once a kid made something, I never touched it. I was just sort of the guardian until I gave it back to them. But then I changed my mind with clay pieces, because this is a piece that my daughter did. It's the second grade face, which we're going to do today. But look she put all this huge chunky hair on it. And I didn't even think about it. It didn't even occur to me about the difference in the thickness between the slab of the face and the thickness of the hair. It made it through the drying fine. There was no problem with that at all. It was when I took it out of the kiln that it had cracked in half, right at that vulnerable point where the hair and the flatter part of the face met. If I was really thinking about it, I would have taken her piece, not done anything to change the front of it, but I would have scooped out some of the clay in the back of it to thin it out a little bit. Anything that's thicker than 1 inch thick, you need to think about it. Yeah, you need to thin it out a little bit. With these thick pieces that we did last night, we did poke holes in the bottom of it to help it.
So should all the Rodins have some sort of holes in the bottom then?
Yep. Take the skewer and skewer it.
Into the 4th grade, so bring in a piece and show it, because the 4th graders, they roll out, just laugh with them during the discussion days. By the way, and actually even the younger ones, they let them know we might need to put some holes in it for the drying process, so that kids understand that could occur, and that's fine. Part of it.
Yeah, and this little bear, this little air dry clay bear, has just 4 little holes in the bottom of it. Another thing with repairs, this was my other daughter's piece, which the leg broke off because we dropped my box got damaged. I'm still very bitter about that. But when she originally made this leg is so thin right there, and I just let it go and I let it be fired, and it came through the firing fine, but then it got dropped and the leg broke off. But what I would do differently now is I would take a little, once the kids are gone, take a little piece of clay and just sort of reinforce it a little bit and just add a little bit more. You want to just try to help the pieces make it to the next stage. With this piece here, I forgot to mention what I did was so it was broken into 2 pieces after the first firing. So I put glaze on it, because we don't paint our faces. I just put glaze on the top and glaze on the 2 pieces, fired them next to each other, but separately. And then when I was done, I glued it together. And the glue that I used was a glue called E6000. It comes in gray tubes. You can get it at Home Depot. You can get it anywhere. And I've had people tell me that they just use Elmer's glue to glue things together. I wouldn't do that necessarily, but E6000 really holds them together really well. Okay, that was the last. Oh, the very last thing is identification. You're going to get kids coming to you, with their I'm done with their, and you're going to have 25 little projects that you have to guard for the next 3 weeks before you fire them. Scratch their initials into the bottom of it. Also be aware of if there are any kids in the class with the same initials. My daughter Zoe Bravo and Zach Benet were frequently in the same class together, so we had to put their middle initials in there or add another letter somehow to identify which kid it is, because they always forget which piece is theirs. No, you spent an hour making that, you can't remember it. Okay, so that is it. Are there any other questions that you guys have before we roll on to the next part here? Yep.
The air dry balloon pieces. You said you just poked holes.
Do you scoop out any clay or literally just?
Not just poked holes. Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sorry, that's for the regular clay as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So anything that's one solid piece.
Anything that's thicker than your thumb, that's kind of how my rule of thumb is that if it's thicker than my thumb, I want to think about how am I going to, can I scoop some out, can I poke some holes in it, somehow make it a little bit thinner. Okay.
That helps with drying?
Mm-hmm. Drying and firing. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to move on now. Jana's going to be passing out. So she's going to be passing out some clay. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be practicing these clay techniques. The first one is working with slabs. Slabs are used in the kindergarten lesson, the second grade lesson, third grade, possibly fifth grade, sixth grade, and seventh. I forgot to put seventh up there. Thank you. The next thing we're going to do is some etching, scratching in with a craft pick or with a skewer. And that etching happens with every project. Joining, attaching with the score and slip technique. We use that in second grade, in fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, and probably eighth grade too. And then coils are second grade and eighth grade. Then pinch pull, we're going to practice that. We're going to do the Bill Reed bear sculpture. Pinch pull is first grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and seventh grade. And then also, one thing to keep in mind is all of your tables have a spray bottle on them. That's if your clay starts to dry out a little bit, just give it a little spray. One thing I mentioned last night that I want to mention again, I think that all of our lessons say to put out a cup of water and a sponge for the students. No. It's in all the videos. I had a fun time doing a lesson with kids that were just in the water with the sponge and it just became a huge soupy mess. After that, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And that's when I picked up some spray bottles and took those to the class. And I'm the one that uses the spray bottle, not the kids. Otherwise, you know what's going to happen if the kids get a hold of that. So that's something to think about. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to practice rolling a slab. Jana has handed out little slabs to everybody. One thing to keep in mind for kindergarten, second grade, and third grade, you are probably going to be making the slabs ahead of time. You can do it as far advanced as you want, that's fine. It's just that to manage the slabs, you need to keep them covered in plastic. So if you're rolling out these slabs ahead of time and cutting them, you're going to want to put them down like a slab, some saran wrap, slab, saran wrap, slab, saran wrap, to keep them separated so that when you're in the class and you're scrambling like Jana is right now, you can quickly get your pieces pulled apart and passed out to the kids. You can make your little pancake stack of slabs. All you have to do is just wrap them in plastic as a garbage bag, seal them up, and they'll be fine. You could do it a week ahead of time. They'll be fine, just as long as it's sealed. You can also help them by putting a little wet rag in there to just keep the moisture in the bag. There'll be condensation in the bag. But you'll need to do those ahead of time. We had somebody in here last night who was doing the sixth grade. Sixth graders, they can, if you have enough equipment, for them to roll all slabs or to share at the same time, they can totally handle rolling a slab as part of the project. Okay, So on your desk, you'll see you have a couple of sticks that look like this, and we only have like 2 per table or whatever. And then you'll have a big dowel, or it might be a skinny dowel like this. This is your rolling pin, and these are your guides. So if you use these 2 guides to roll your slab, your piece of clay will never be thinner than that. It'll maintain that thickness. One thing I wanted to point out to you, we used to do our clay training with red clay. You can see my tools are stained red, and this does come off on the clay. So if your school uses red clay and white clay, you should have a set of tools for the red clay, and you should have a set of tools for the white clay, because that red stuff never comes out no matter how hard. These things have been washed, I don't even know how many times, and it just doesn't come out. So, okay, so we're going to practice rolling a slab. Now, I'm trying to make it a little bit wider, so I'm laying my slab down like this between the two sticks. And I'm going to roll with my rolling pin. Now, again, since my rolling pin is dirty red, it will stain my clay. So I'm just pushing it down and rolling it out. So it'll maintain the thickness. Okay. So give it a try. So now, yep. Yeah. So now I've rolled it out, and it's squished down, and it's about, whatever that thickness we tried to decide it was last night. What did we say? 3/8, something like that. So now I have a nicely rolled slab. And here, I'm done. You can use mine. And I will wait until you guys all get something rolled out before moving on. Is it going okay? Okay. Okay, how are we doing? Does everyone have a slab? We're still working, okay. Here, you want to try a thicker one? That might be easier to get it done. Everyone there? Nearly there, okay. Okay, so we are doing the 2nd grade Rubens face. That's what we're going to be working on right now. So again, I said if you're kindergarten, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, you're going to want to roll out the slabs ahead of time, get them and do the cutout part, because the kids, that's too hard for them and it'll take up too much time. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so you'll find on your desk, you'll find a skewer. And my skewer's all bent and gross. I think I'm going to take one of yours over here. Thank you. So your skewer is your cutting tool. Now we provide in the materials package, we provide these little craft picks, because they were like, oh, the skewers, the kids are going to poke each other. And, just tell the kids, don't poke each other with the skewers. So I like the skewer is easier, I think, to do it. So we're making the oval for the face. So look down at your slab. I'm flipping mine over because it got dirty from the roller. And just lightly with your tip, just sort of sketch out what your oval is going to look like on your slab. We're not going to cut it straight away, but just like sketch it out a little bit. You just draw into the top of it. Now on the website and in the materials, there are templates for the face to make it easier, but we can just do it here. Okay, now to cut it, I'm going to hold my skewer perpendicular to my clay, and I'm going to dig down in and cut around. Try not to rip up my tablecloth, please. I will be using them in January, so I'm just going to push down in and just hold it up, and I'm going all the way around to cut it. And if you rip the tablecloth, I'll forgive you. Okay. So I cut all the way around it, and I have like extra clay on my skewer. I just pull that off, and then I pull off what's around the outside. So now, today we are going to use these outside pieces to build our face, but since you've cut the pieces out already for this one, you're going to have to give the kids, you know, the outside scraps to use for the project. So hang on to those. Okay, now I've got my face cut out. My slab's pretty thick here, and when I was cutting that out, I have all these little burrs of clay that are around the outside of it. I want you to smooth those down. Just take your finger and just push them into the clay, or you can pull them off, because if you leave those there, or the kids leave them, they get sharp as a razor when you fire it. They're really, really sharp. So smooth those out. Just smooth that out. Just get rid of it. Okay, making that look nice. And clay together. And remember now, our clay is exposed to the air, so it's starting to dry as we're working. Okay, so you want to work quickly. Okay, so we all know, because we've all been to training before, we all know that our eyes are in the middle of our head, right? So your head starts up here and ends down here. So we need to mark the face with, so we know where to put the eyes. So take your clay and take your skewer. If your skewer's straight, don't use my bendy skewer because that won't help you. If your skewer's straight, just look at your clay and line it up like this. And just press your skewer into it just a little bit. What was that? Yep.
I don't like the shape of my face. Can I add a piece to the side to make it more even? If I'm a kid and I cut it out and I don't like the shape,
Yeah.
can I add to it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not going to break.
No, it should be fine. This clay is super, super soft straight out of the bag, so you can take a piece like that, and you can just push it in. You can just put. I know. You're like, just checking. Yeah. But we're also going to teach you how to properly add. Okay, so I've got my first line, and now I'm doing my second line to get across where the eyes are going to be. Like that. In the middle. In the middle. In the middle. Okay, and then take that off. So I've just marked it, just where it goes. In the video, it might show them going like this with the tip of the skewer. Don't do, the kids will too deep into it. And you know how we discovered this? Here in training. I was like, oh look, just go like that. Okay, so now take your thumbs and press it into the clay where the eyes are going to be, just lightly. It doesn't need to be deep. Just lightly press it in so you know where you're going to put those eyes. Okay? And then start by taking a ball of clay from your leftover scrap and make 2 little balls of clay for the eyeballs. Make your eyeballs ahead of time before you put them on the clay, because I made the mistake, of course, making an eyeball and attaching it, and then I try to go make the other one and they're not the same size. And so one's bigger than the other. So I kind of form them both ahead of time to make sure they're the same size. All right, let's see. Are these more like it? This one still looks bigger. Okay, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to learn how to score and slip attach. So take your little container of slip and take the lid off. And with your skewer, you are going to use the tip of your skewer, or you can use the fork if you want to scratch in little cross hatches like this. like that. If you can see that. There are little cross hatches on there. And you're going to do it on the eyeball. So both sides have to have the scratches. What you're doing is you're roughing up the clay so that when they'll attach together. Then I dip my finger in the slip and put just a little bit on the eye. I literally just a little dab, and you put the eyeball on. And since you've scored it and it's rough, then that slip goes in there. The slip is the same material as the clay. It acts like glue, and it glues it together. So then you can put your eyeball on and figure out how you want that positioned. And then I'm going to do it with the second eye. So here goes my second eye. Score it with the cross hatches, put some slip on there. And once you get your eyes on there, sort of wiggle them around a little bit. Then you'll see that it's not going to fall off. It's pretty secure. And as that dries, it'll adhere it together. Okay. So now continue building your eyes. You can do eyelids if you want to go over the top of those balls. I see mine are not the same shape. You can do eyebrows. You can poke, use the back of your skewer to put the pupil in the eye if you want to. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make some pupils in my eyes. Let's see. I'm going to make eyelids. To make an eyelid, I just take a little piece of clay, shape it like a half circle. Am I going to score and slip it to attach it? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So, these little faces, they're funny little faces. The kids can do, whatever they want. They don't have to do eyelids. They can just go straight to doing eyebrows or whatever. They make funny little noses, funny lips. It's however they want to, they have the freedom to do however they want to do it. So now I put my eyelid's broken. I didn't make a very big one. My eye was too big. And use your finger to press the clay, from the eyelid into the eye. It's all right. There's no wrong way. It's just whatever you want to do. But the main thing is every time you add something, what do you have to do? Score it and add slip. Now the kids are pretty good with the eyes. They usually remember to do that in the nose, but sometimes when they get down to the mouth, they've forgotten already. So as each kid turns in their pieces, just wiggle everything, just to be sure. Yeah, I'm not doing such a great job here today. At some point, you can also, rub out the guide marks on the forehead if you're ready to do that. I don't understand. Mm-hmm. Oh, do it. Yeah. Yeah, if you can figure that out. Okay, I'm attaching the nose. Jana's going to do something here. We'll see if it works. Behind me, so just ignore her. All right, attaching the nose. Do you have the web address? You know how to find it? Okay. So the nose, you can make the nose however you want. We have a really funny sample here somewhere of a nose that just is like tweaks, sticks straight out. It's funny, funny, funny. And just blend it in. So however you want. And same with the mouth. The mouth can just be a simple oval, whatever. you can do just like the U-shaped mouth. Look, they got a trick going on here. Hee hee. Christian has this camera looking at my. Ew, that's too big. Don't like that. Hey, look. Now you can see it. We've always wanted to do that. We haven't ever been able to. I usually the eyelid, I just took a piece of clay and just stuck it on top of it. That's it. No tricks there. And I'm rubbing that out, the line out. What? Yeah. Anything. I just did a rectangle. Yeah, the noses are the fun part because everybody does something different. She's got a nice little skinny nose up here. I always just take a big piece and go on there. Whatever, my lips are terrible looking. Anyway, so let's talk about the hair. I know you guys probably aren't there yet. Sometimes the kids want to make like big hair that like sticks out, and we kind of discourage doing that because anything that's hanging off of the face has potential to break off. So think about that. We were talking about hair last night, and doing hair in flat pieces, you know, adding flat pieces to something to do the hair is probably better than having a big something that sticks out like that. Can you guys see what I'm doing? No, you can't see. You know, a piece that attaches like this is probably better than something sticking off like that, or ponytails sticking off like that, because that's a weak point right there, and that'll break right off. One thing that you can do, you can teach the kids how to do is make coils and do coils for hair. You just roll the clay between your hands like this, or you roll it on the table like that. You know, and you can do fun things with that for hair. You know, how cute would that be if there was a bunch of those on the head? A bunch of coils. Ooh, or maybe earrings. I don't know. I think I'm going to go like that. But again, anytime you attach something, you have to score and slip. Okay. And I'm literally just grabbing pieces of my clay and, hey, that looks good to me. How you guys doing out there? You good? You coming along? So again, you use the score and slip for second grade. You use it for fourth grade. You use it for fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth. All right, and I'm going to call it done right there. I'm going to maybe smooth that out a little bit. But that's pretty much done. So, you know, just add some hair, add some whatever, and let it dry. So I'm looking at the hair on this one. That's not too thick. You know, it's, not more than my thumb. So that's fine. I don't need to do anything with that. That should dry just fine. Okay, Jana, do you have little animal balls done yet? Okay. What was that? You, no, you don't get to sit and perfect your face. Because we got to keep going. We got 2 more things we have to do. I'm like looking at my time here. Oh, while you guys are working, actually, I'll talk to you about the kindergarten project and the 3rd grade project, because those are both slabs. So how many of you in here are doing the kindergarten project this year? A couple of you? Okay. So the kindergarten project is a handprint, the kids' handprint, and it's also playing with clay. So they will be doing the handprint with you, and then at back of their desk or wherever, however you set your classroom, they just get a ball of clay that they get to experiment with. The thickness of the clay that we call for on the website, I would say make it a little bit thicker than that, because you're actually pressing their hand into the clay, and you kind of got to press hard to get that imprint of their hand, and when you do that, it thins out the clay. So you're going to want to make it just a little bit thicker than what we call for. We found that. And also, the second part of that, another thing you might want to do when you're pressing their hand is you can also take a skewer and you can outline their hand and leave a little scratch mark on the outside. The other thing I did with my kids is I put their name on the front, I put the year, that kind of thing to just mark, and then they decorate around the outside border. You can do it round, you can do it square, it doesn't matter. One thing you'll need to do ahead of time is collect some things for texture. This is what I call my bag of texture here. I just have random things in it, like a pine cone. Beads are really fun because they make little circles. I have a rasp, an old rasp thing that you can use to press into the clay to make texture. Just makes different textures. What else do I have in here? I have what's this? Oh, I have an old key. You can use bolts, you can use screws, anything that'll leave an impression. The spirals that I got on that piece there was this necklace. It was the shells from this necklace. Made the spirals. Acorns make really cool texture. Another thing about texture. These like bags for the cuties. Oh, this is so thrashed. That makes great like snake skin texture. But I need a new bag. That one's too old. So you'll need to collect things for texture. Even just a rock, an old rock, can make cool texture. Yeah. Another thing and possibly for the kinder too, but for the 3rd grade Cheyenne Shield, this project has a component of feathers and leather that goes into it. And you'll need to make those holes for the kids. And to make these holes for them to string the leather in, and maybe even if you wanted to possibly hang it, is to use this straw. The straw will cut the hole. Yeah, that's what we were talking about last night, is to get those holes in there ahead of time, so they have some holes in there. And I just, like, as you see in here, we just have little cut up straws, and then you can just squeeze the clay out of the straw to get it out, because it does fill it up. Or if you're only doing one hole and your thing gets clogged, just wait. When the clay dries, it'll just shake right out of the straw. So that's what the little straws are on your table for, is for making holes in slab pieces. Okay, is there anything else I need to say about slabs? No, I think that's it. Okay, great. Okay, Jana has passed out, oops, let me put this away. Has passed out clay for our next project. Our next project that we're going to be working on today is the Bill Reed Bear sculpture. So it's a pinch pull animal. So when you get your clay, when you get your clay and it comes in those big 25-pound bags like that, sometimes they've been sitting around for a while, or they've been in your art closet or whatever, and they tend to get a little stiff. So sometimes before you start working with your clay, you'll want to take your bag of clay. Unfortunately, I don't have it. I only have this little partial. You want to take your bag of clay and just drop it on the ground to kind of get it, wake it up a little bit. And when you do it with the big bricks of clay, you're going to want to turn the clay to still try to keep the rectangular shape to it. But also, when we start the clay projects with the kids, you've cut these, a day or two before. They get really stiff when they're sitting in the bag. So the first thing that I have the kids do is just to wake up their little piece of clay. Just wake it up. And of course, this is their favorite part of the project, is banging the clay. But turn the clay as you're banging it to try to still keep it into one shape. I've had kids totally flatten their whole thing out like a pancake, and I was just like, oh, what'd you do that for? So just turn it. We're just kind of waking up the water molecules. All right. All right, so take your clay and just sort of pass it back and forth in your hand. You're just sort of waking it up, getting it going here. You've got it wadded into a ball. And I'm going to show you how to make a four-legged animal. Bring in pictures of animals. I think the handout for this is like Arctic animals, keeping with the theme of the Haida culture. But a lot of kids are really visual, and they need to see something in order to make it. Me too, I'm the same way. I want to really see what it looks like to help me out when I'm making it. Otherwise, I was like, where do I put the head? But start off by taking your animal. I'm going to attempt a pig. Last night I tried to do a pig. It turned out looking more like a dog. So start by squeezing your clay and identifying an area that's going to be the head, because you want to sort of save that piece of clay. And then I take my craft stick and I'm going to divide out where those legs are going to be. It's just to give me a visual of where they might be. Now, what kind of animals would be good for a little clay project? What do you think? Turtles are fantastic. Penguins are good. Cats, pigs, dogs. Would a giraffe be good? No. Would a horse be good? No. So lead the kids towards those. Bunny rabbit, that'd be fantastic. I'm putting a cross in the clay just to divide out, like this is going to be one leg. So the pinch pull technique is you pinch and you pull. You pinch and you pull. Pinch and pull. And turn it in your hand, pinch and pull and pinch and pull. These are big pieces of clay. Because this is not, since this is first grade, they haven't even learned the score and sliplet yet. So it's pinch and pull, pinch and pull. So they're not going to be taking something off and trying to attach it on. It won't work because they don't know how to do that. And as you're creating your animal, it could turn into something else when you're doing it, and be open to that. When you're demonstrating to the kids, say to them, I think I'm going to make a pig. And then as you start making it, you're like, oh, it's turning into a bear. Now it's going to be a bunny, Because sometimes they change. As you're doing them, it literally turns. I have a turtle today. So pinch and pull, pinch and pull. And see, I'm going for a pig again. I don't know, though.
Is the Rodin one also pinch and pull, or
It is.
Are they doing any slipping for that?
They are.
Okay.
It's both. Yeah. Are you doing that one?
I'm helping someone.
Okay. Because we're going to do that after we do this.
Oh, okay.
So we'll actually do it. Yeah. Pinch, pull, pinch, pull. And how long I have so much clay here. This is a lot. Pinch, pull. Yep. Doesn't matter. We'll poke holes in it. Yeah. I'm just trying to get something going here. feel like I have so much clay this time. Pinch pull, pinch pull. Also, if you're making an animal that's going to be standing, you're going to want to test that out. Say, okay, can we stand on these legs? And if you have too much clay, you might need to pinch some off and discard it. That's okay too. I don't know, I think I'm making a cow this time. I just have so much. You think it's a bear? Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just like, it's getting longer and longer that I had so much clay. All right.
This is a first grade project, so they haven't learned score and slip yet. So basically, watch out, have your helpers watch out that they don't break off a piece and then add it to like a form. Because they have to pinch and pull it
Yeah.
going on. Because they might like make something and then just stick it on and think that'll work. And then yeah, we have slip
Oh yeah, the person who sat there last night made a T-Rex. Yeah, it's the spot. Mine turned into a goat. Okay. So if it's going to stand up, get it standing. Okay, mine turned into a goat in the end. Started as a pig. I had got to get this. Okay. And think about texture, okay? Can you use the fork in any way to help you, give some texture, some hair, some fur to your little creation? My little goat has nice fur. Little goat needs little horns. So my little goat has fur. I'm just scratching fur into the.
This is so therapeutic.
Yes, it is. I know we were thinking about having a sculpt and sip. Yeah. Come and do little projects.
Yeah, there's the difficulty trying to sip while well, I guess with the stem it might be better.
Yeah, you're like, Yeah. All right. There's my little goat. You never know what you're going to get. Last night I had a pig. Jana had a dog. I feel like I have still too much clay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. We're going to do that project next. We're going to do it today, next. That's our next one. All right, so this project is first grade. Again, pinch and pull, we're going to do it with the fourth grade. We're actually going to do the Thinker is going to be our next one that we do. And then also pinch and pull is also used in seventh grade. They're basically just making an animal again. And then they put it on a slab. They attach it to a slab. All right. What do we got here? So Jana's going to be handing out more clay for our next one. A little block of clay for the person, and then a little French fry of clay for the arms. So she's going to be coming around with that. Ooh, that's heavy stuff. How you guys doing out there? It is hard. It's hard. Because if you don't ever work in 3-dimension, it's like using a different parts of your brain. Because you have to think about the whole thing all the way around. And you'll find when we start doing the Rodin, you have to also think about gravity, because it's a sitting figure.
For the holes in the bottom, like how closely spaced or how many?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's right. The holes in the bottom. So that'll help it dry. Okay, I'm going to... Did we get any interesting animals out there? Did anyone do a turtle? If all else fails, do a turtle. If all else fails, do a turtle. Or a penguin. Penguins are really easy too. Turtles and penguins. But no snakes. Well, snakes aren't pinch and pull. It's, roll out a coil. If you pinch and pull the cobra, you could do that. Pinch and pull the cobra. Okay, Jana's passing out clay for our next one. Did you make an elephant over there? Yeah. So cute. Look at that. Oh. And does it touch the ground?
My head was too big.
Oh, there you go. I'm all more stability, even better. Okay. But yeah, as you're teaching that one, talk to the kids out loud as it's evolving. All right, how are we on? 3 more tables. Okay. Yeah. You are a waiter. You are, and that's heavy too, heavy stuff. Okay, we're doing great on time here. We'll just get this passed out. We can move on. What'd you end up with?
It looks more like a little finger.
Oh, that's cute. All right, are we done? Does everyone have clay? Not quite yet. Okay. One more table. Okay, so we're gonna, thank you, Jana. We're gonna move on and we're gonna work on the Rodin Thinker. If you guys feel that you need to rinse your hands off, if they're getting really crummy, you can go ahead and do that. There's a bucket there. There's a bucket placed over there somewhere. And there's one in the back there. All right, so you should have 2 pieces of clay at this point. This one is going to be for your body. Your body and your torso and your legs, and I feel like this is a little bit small. But that, do you have a bigger one? I feel like it's just a, huh? Yeah, I'm like, yeah. Here. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking around the room. I'm like, oh, yours is bigger than mine. Whatever. Okay, so hang on. Let me just, because she threw some pieces together. Okay. So we're going to start off with this one by identifying a head at the top. Just sort of like I'm going to reserve this clay for the head. Here we go. And then I'm going to use my my craft stick, and I'm going to cut some legs into it. Just sort of cut that through. And I'm going to start identifying, okay, like this is my torso. I'm going to squeeze that, elongate that a little bit. I've got my head, keep that there. I'm going to start squeezing out my legs. Think about the position that you want your thinker to be sitting in. Crisscross applesauce is a really good way to make your thinker sit down. I'm trying to think of what's over there behind you. Legs up like this is a good way for your thinker to sit. Some kids do them hanging off the table. That's okay too. Sometimes kids will take, extra clay and make something for it to sit on. I've seen kneeling down. I've seen kids do the splits. It's kind of funny. But you're going to need to think of that pretty right in the beginning, because we are working against gravity here. Gravity is our partner, and you have to think about that immediately and get your piece seated. So I'm just pinching and pulling a torso, sort of pulling that out a little bit, making it longer. It's really the legs that are going to really need to be worked a lot, because you're going to have to figure out how it's going to be seated with those legs. And if you need to make the torso a little bit skinnier, that's okay, because we're going to be adding the arms to the back of it, and it's going to become part of the torso. So I'm feeling like my torso is really long, so I'm just going to cut into it a little bit more and make more of that legs. Okay. So now I'm going to make mine sitting like this, and you can also, plop it down, get it seated. I'm going to do mine with like crisscross applesauce legs, like it's meditating kind of. So I'm going to think about that, how that's going to work, what's the leg going to look like when it's going out, and I've got to pinch pull my leg long enough to bring it around. So my guy is already sitting down. And last night, one of the problems I had with my leg is that my thighs got too skinny.
What do you do when that happens?
I added more clay to it, and I scored and I slipped and I took it from my little pile over here.
Is there like a rule of thumb, the opposite side of how, like, don't let it get any thinner than?
1/4 inch. Yeah, I always think of like my pinky thumbnail, my pinky nail is like the shortest, you know, something can be, I kind of think of that like the smallest, or the size of like a pencil, diameter of a pencil. Okay, keep working here on my legs. I've got to bend it in this way. And I'm still just pinching, pulling, pinching, pulling. And as I'm doing this, I'm just kind of figuring out how much clay I need to still be pulling out. Like, because if you are sitting with your legs like this, you know, your feet are kind of where your knees are. So is that enough? Is that long enough? Did I do enough there? Okay. All right, and so since my legs are touching each other, what should I do with them? Score and slip them together. Yeah, it'll make it more stable. So mine's still pretty rough looking. I'm still kind of working on it.
If you're incorporating more clay, do you have to score and slip it?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm just trying to like make the ball bigger,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
still do that?
She asked if she's trying to make her
My
torso,
so I want to make it
her torso, she's trying to bulk up her torso. She's like, so can I just add clay to it? It's like, yeah, you can. Take some of your clay, you know, and score and slip and add it on to build up that torso. You know, we're 4th graders now. We learned in the 2nd grade how to do this. So it's okay. They can add clay, but they have to do it in the right way. Okay, so I've got my guy seated. It's kind of, the legs are kind of a little messy, but that's okay. Because again, I'm thinking about balance. I'm thinking about structure. I'm thinking about stability. So I want to get those arms on because that's going to add more weight up at the shoulders. So I want to get that on so I know what that variable is going to be like. Because adding that on, all of a sudden it could like slump over. And so I want to do that now. So my skinny piece is going to be for the arms. Now last night when I did this, I feel like I thinned it out too much because I felt like I felt like I needed more on the shoulders. So, and then my hands were like these big fat things and I had to pick them off. So I'm just going to add this whole thing, and you're going to take the arms and you're going to put it across the back of the shoulders. And so you're adding bulk to the shoulders, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and score and slip around that space on the shoulders. And both pieces. All right. So there's my piece added to that. And I'm going to use that. I left it kind of bulky because last night I kind of got myself in trouble. It was a little too thin, and I had to add more clay. So what I'm going to do now is take this clay. It's scored, it's slipped. That slip is there. It's a little slippery. And I'm going to pull it down into the body and pull it up into the head and neck. And just attach those two pieces really, really well. And now that becomes part of the bulk of the shoulders and the back. Now the tricky part of this is getting the clay, is doing the armpits. Because you want to take clay from the chest and pull it into the arms. You'll see that there's a space here where there's a seam from the chest and the arm because we attached it to the back. So pull the clay from the chest onto the arm to really attach it really well. And if you can't get your finger down into that, you can use your tool, use your little craft stick to pull from the chest up into the arm. Because sometimes you just can't reach down in there. Okay. So now I feel like that arm is really well attached. Oops, no, it just cracked. Look at that. Okay. Go back in. It didn't attach. Smooth it back the other way. So you really want to get those attached really well. And then I'm going to pinch and pull my arms out more, to make them longer. And again, if you've got scraps of clay and you feel like you need to add, you can just take from your clay. Maybe give your little pile of clay on the side, maybe give it a little spray with water so it doesn't dry out, so you can use it if you need to. Okay, now I'm going to attach my other arm. I'm going to pull from the chest onto the arm. So since we just manhandled this little guy, you're going to want to find that seated position again. We've added more clay. We've added more, more variables to this project. So now I'm lengthening out my arms. And if you feel your guy is a little unstable, you may want to make the arms attached to the legs somehow to give it more stability. Maybe the hands are resting on the knees or something to give it a little bit more stability. Because the more places where you can attach it to itself, the more stable it's going to be. And I think I'm going to do just that. I'm going to score and slip, attach the hand to the knee. Just to make it stable. And then you can start working on the details of the head or the face or whatever. But you just want to get it stable. So the most important thing is getting it seated as quickly as possible. I've had kids that have tried to do the project flat and then try to sit it up, and that just it doesn't work. So you got to get it seated as quickly as possible. They ended up turning it into something that's just sort of lounging back. And they can do more details. They can smooth things out, or they can leave it rough. However, it's just the experience of getting it together here. Are there any questions? You guys are doing great. Yeah, definitely. This is one thing that can happen, which happened to my piece last night, is the clay can get fatigued from so much work that you get your project and sometimes they just go bleh, and they completely fall apart. But if that happens, you just have to let the clay rest a little bit and then kind of try to compact it together again and squish it all back together again. So keep that in mind. I've had it where we've put these in the storage box, to the cardboard box to store them, and I've gone back and looked at them 20 minutes later, and I've had a couple pieces that are gone, boom, and slumped over. So try to just squeeze them back into position again, or also when they're in that leather hard state, or as they start drying, they'll get stronger again. You can use newspaper to put around the pieces to help stabilize them and keep them upright. I've had pieces that we didn't stabilize them enough, and so every time you sit them down, they fall over because they sort of dried like leaning back a little bit, and they weren't stable. So storage is a big thing for them. So definitely go back and check them after a day, because you may be able to save the piece if it hasn't completely fallen apart yet. You can, score and slip it back together and just make it stronger. All right, I'm going to briefly, in the last couple minutes, talk about the Klaus Oldenburg 2 cheeseburgers with everything. This lesson combines everything that we've learned. The kids will be doing some slab work. They'll be rolling out slabs and wrapping it around things. They will be pinch pulling things. They will be, they'll be adding, scoring and slipping and adding things. Bring in, this is a multimedia piece. The kids are going to be displaying their pieces that they make with, pizza with pizza boxes, sushi with sushi boxes, those kind of things. I asked the kids to bring the stuff in ahead of time, but a lot of times as they're making their project, they change their mind and they want to do something else. But it's really nice to have things like, this is just like a baking cup, a piece of plastic. These things can be used to form things around and then take them off. For example, if you wanted to, I don't know if this will, I got rid of my rolling pin. Where'd it go? Let me borrow yours. Thank you. Like that ice cream cone up there, I guarantee you is not solid. It's hollow inside. You can form the cone or the ice cream by rolling out a slab and draping it over something to take the shape of it, and then taking it off, like taking this off the ice cream cone and then shaping it from there. That looks exactly like what they did, and then attaching it to the cone. You can also use newspaper to support things. Let's say you're making this ice cream cone and you put newspaper on the inside of it to hold it up, and then you attach it to your cone, and your cone is hollow too. That wouldn't be solid either. And then you score and you slip and you attach it. You can literally leave the newspaper in there and it will just burn up in the kiln and it will be fine. And as it dries, the newspaper's still in there. It's okay, no big deal. But use things to help to help mold around. So definitely take in newspaper, definitely take in plastic forms if you have little things like this so that they can use it. Again, another thing to think about, I had a little girl one time who made a bowl. She just made a slab and then made a little rib around it, and then she made these like big cherries, and they were solid, and she stuck them on the bowl, and she made this two cute little cherry things that came up and met each other at the top. And when she was done, I said, okay, well, we've got these thick cherries here. What do we need to do? We need to take the skewer and skewer up in underneath to reduce the denseness of the thick cherries that were in the bowl. And so we did that, and they were fine. They were totally fine. So just always keep in mind thickness and thinness and things that are next to each other that may cause breakage. And if something's really thick, then you need to poke holes in it. So the kids get really creative with this in the 5th grade. They've been there, they've gone through the years and they've tried out these techniques, and they'll remember how to do things and remember how to make things. And then when they're done, then you figure out, okay, how are we going to set the table? Do we have, can we get little ice cream cups to put things in and that kind of thing? Are there any questions about anything?
Do you recommend that they assemble things in different pieces? Like sushi is really popular.
Mm-hmm.
Do they assemble like the little pieces and roll it, or just
Yeah.
carve it out?
Assemble it. No? What are you saying?
Like sushi, things like that, if they can try instead sort of sculpt it in texture, but it's still a solid piece, because otherwise, you're either doing a whole lot of scoring and slipping, all those little pieces will have these
Mm-hmm.
slips where they won't fall off, or you're sitting there making outputs and then gluing is a problem. So like I had a student do a glazed donut with
It depends. Like we have a little hamburger over there, which is like 5 little pieces.
Right. But they're like solid, bigger pieces, right?
Yeah.
So sprinkles or little pieces of glaze, things like that.
Yeah, I've seen popcorn where somebody made all these little pieces of popcorn where they just sort of pinched and pulled them.
But like tacos, each little piece of cheese and lettuce, try and get them to do like large clumps that make it look like cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Different layers.
Yeah. 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 This one's fun. It's fun, and it's fun to help them figure out how to make it too. It's their favorite foods. Any other questions? So you can take your pieces home. We have paper plates here. If you want to put them on a paper plate, we have. Where'd it go? You have it? Oh, we have plastic wrap too. I'm like, I put it over here. Wash your hands in the buckets. Let's see, what else? What else? Anything else, Jana? Yeah, enjoy. Have fun with it. Oh, put your lid on your slip. Oh, yeah. No, here you go.